This is my sketchbook from a workshop that I recently taught in Palm Beach, Florida. I started out with a monochromatic demo just using one color so that my students could get used to working with values. This is of some palm trees that were on the beach. We continued to work with the palm trees because they have a really nice sway to the way that they move, and I feel that gesture plays a really important role in any type of drawing or painting, so that was what I wanted my students to learn from this part of the demo. I also wanted them to continue working just with one color so that they would get used to looking for darks and lights, because that's what makes any painting or any sketch have a lot of depth and a lot of dimension. Once I had them do a few studies just using the one color, I did another demo of some palm trees using 3 colors. I used a red, a blue, and a yellow, just primary colors, to mix up secondary colors and dark values to really get some depth and to show the vibrancy of the tropical landscape. And here are some more. There were lots and lots of palm trees for us to paint. This was just outside a little cafe, and the towering palms really gave it like almost a nice canopy, almost like an umbrella over the whole scene. This was a really challenging plant to paint. It's another variety of palm called a silver palm, and the leaves themselves had this really interesting silvery gray tone to them, and so it was a challenge to mix up the paint colors to get them to sort of emulate that sense of a dusty gray. Plus, they're very thick and densely concentrated in terms of the way that the leaves were laid out. So I told my students to really look at the shadows and to focus on the shadows to create that sense of one palm being behind another and another, and just really giving it that nice thick sense of volume. This was one of my favorite things to paint. It was a banana tree. And the banana tree was similar to the palm trees in terms of its gesture, but it had thicker leaves, and they were such a beautiful, bright color of green. I didn't have time to really finish this one, but I felt like I got enough information on my page to really capture the essence of the tree. And that's something that's always important to remember. It's always better, I think, to stop sooner rather than later and leave something a little unfinished, because once you overwork it, you're never going to get that vibrancy back. So that's one of the reasons this was one of my favorites. One of the places that we painted had some beautiful hibiscus flowers, and my students always love painting flowers, so I did this little demo of some pink hibiscus that had some sunlight just sort of hitting them straight on, and there was a lot of almost a sense of translucency to them, with lots of really nice deep shadows, and these really dark darks behind them are what help to give them that sense of strong sunlight just dancing across the surface. This was a lesson that I did on site on one-point perspective, and I went right back to using that one color because I wanted to focus more on the concept of perspective rather than on color mixing. So this was great. It was right on a walkway right next to the ocean, so we had some nice breeze to work with. It was in the afternoon, so there were strong shadows. And once again, we worked with those palm trees and with the concept of one-point perspective and everything leading back to a single vanishing point. This was actually done when I had some free time after the workshop was over. I went into the center of Palm Beach and walked around the shops, and much of the location, it almost looks like you're in Europe. There are little squares, lots of fountains, more palm trees. All of the buildings seem to have either white stucco or pale colored stucco storefronts, and it was just a really pretty place to paint. When I was working on this one, there was actually a tour group that came through, and they were all standing around behind me watching. So maybe I'll have some new participants for next year. And then this was another tropical garden that I painted, and you can see there's just so much lush vibrancy and so much variation in all of the greens. I wanted to get almost a semi-abstract look to this, where I didn't focus necessarily on any single part of the scene, but I wanted to just capture that overall sense of busyness and lots of vibrant tropical plants coming out at me. And then last of all, this is another version of the scene that I showed you before with the palm trees. I just really like the sense of peace and just sort of serenity, just sitting there by the water. So I decided to do another one in color, and that's what this is. And I think that's about it. So I hope to go back to the same area next year and have another workshop there. Working in watercolor on location like this is just so much fun that no matter where you go, you're always bound to come back with a sketchbook that you can use to just sort of remember the trip. And it's just so much different than just looking at photographs, because when you paint something, you have to really study it, and that just sort of really ingrains it in your memory.